What really happened when Brooks and Dunn broke up? And why did Ronnie Dunn vanish from the spotlight, only to return with a confession no one expected? At 71, he's finally telling the truth about the silence, the doubts, and the moment everything changed. But trust me, what he reveals will hit harder than any song. Stay with me because the real story behind country's most legendary duo is way deeper than you think. The silence didn't just break. It cracked wide open the minute Ronnie Dunn stepped away from the mic. For years, fans had wondered what really caused the famous Brooks and Dunn split. And now, at 71, Ronnie was ready to share the truth. He wasn't just opening up. He was opening a door to memories, to heartbreak, and to a past few dared to touch. On stage that night, it all unraveled, quietly, without warning. A man known for pouring his soul into every note of Neon Moon now stood motionless under the lights, his eyes searching the crowd as if for permission to step away. It all started in Indianapolis. Gainbridge Fieldhouse was packed to the rafters with 20,000 people, screaming like it was 1992 again. Brooks and Dunn had just launched into Scootin Boogie, and everything seemed perfect, until it wasn't. Kix Brooks was alive with energy, strumming his guitar and working the crowd like he had for decades. But Ronnie, center stage, seemed off. Not in a way most fans would notice. He still hit every note, but his body told a different story. Movement slowed, focus wavered. Something deeper was unraveling. No one watching could have guessed this was about to become one of those moments people would never forget. The band spotted it first, a tiny shake of the head, barely there. But to those who toured with him, it said everything. And then Ronnie looked over at them. No words, just a glance. The kind of glance that carries years of trust, late nights, and miles of highway. In the sea of fans, someone caught it. Radio host Matt Malone filmed it, just a clip. But what it captured hit like a gut punch. Ronnie moved toward the front of the stage, slowly, like he wasn't quite sure if his legs would carry him all the way. He stretched out his arms, not in triumph, but in something gentler, like gratitude and farewell intertwined. Then he tapped his heart, just once, and waved, and walked away. People were stunned. Some didn't notice right away, caught in the rhythm, still clapping, still cheering. But others felt the shift, a strange silence behind the music, a whisper that something wasn't right. Backstage was pure confusion. Fans, still in their seats, traded theories. Was it exhaustion? Was he done? The next morning, Malone's video went viral. Just a 15-second clip, but it traveled fast. The caption was simple, "Feel better, Ronnie." And that was enough. Fans flooded the comments. Stories poured in. People saying how Ronnie's voice had been the background to their hardest days. Breakups, deployments, empty roads. This wasn't just about one concert. For many, it felt like someone they knew had faltered in front of them. Questions exploded online. Was he okay? Would the tour continue? Why now after all these years? Everyone wanted answers, but all they got was a single line from his team. Ronnie wasn't feeling well during the encore. That was it, nothing more. It calmed things a little, but not completely. Because when someone's music has been part of your life for decades, a vague explanation isn't enough. You want to know they're truly okay. Then came the next stop on the tour, Rosemont, Illinois. The air was thick with anticipation. Would Ronnie show up? Would he sing? And then, right on cue, he walked out on that stage like he never left. The same energy, the same voice, the same magic. The man was 71 and still lit up the arena like it was his first rodeo. Fans lost it. And just like that, the comeback had begun. But something about that moment in Indy stuck. It wasn't about weakness. It was about vulnerability. Seeing someone like Ronnie, so strong, so legendary, take a moment to step back made him more real. And somehow that hit even harder. Because in a world full of polished performances and rehearsed lines, this was raw and honest. A reminder that even icons are human. There were only 3 shows left after that. 3 final nights on the New Moon Tour to prove that time might leave its mark, but it can't erase greatness. But to understand how deep this story really goes, you have to rewind to when it wasn't about sold-out shows and platinum records, but about 2 guys chasing a sound that hadn't been born yet. Ronnie Gene Dunn entered the world in 1953 in the small town of Coleman, Texas. Back then, no one imagined his voice would echo through stadiums across the country. He was the preacher's kid. Life was predictable. Sundays in church, Wednesdays in prayer meetings, everyone assumed he'd follow the same path. Become a Baptist preacher. Safe, expected. But deep inside, a different rhythm played. At Hardin-Simmons University, Ronnie started down the expected road. Sermon notes, scripture studies. But late at night, while others read Bible verses, Ronnie was in his room, bass guitar in hand, chasing melodies that felt like they came from someplace deeper. Music wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling that shook his foundation. Eventually, the school gave him an ultimatum: faith or music. He chose music and paid the price. Expelled, disowned, adrift. 400 miles away, a boy named Leon Eric Brooks, Kix to the world, was living a different story. In Shreveport, Louisiana, music ran through the streets like water. Johnny Horton lived down the road. For Kix, country music wasn't a dream, it was a language. By 1976, he was in Nashville writing hit songs for stars like John Conley and the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. While Ronnie stumbled, Kix was soaring. Meanwhile, Ronnie was still chasing something that kept slipping away. A few small singles, a chart that stopped just short of breaking. At one point, he must have wondered, was leaving it all behind worth it? Then, out of nowhere, a lifeline. His drummer friend secretly entered him into a Marlboro-sponsored talent contest. Ronnie didn't even know, but he won. The prize? A recording session in Nashville. That one session changed everything. Producer Scott Hendricks heard his voice and passed it along to Tim Du Bois at Arista Nashville. And Du Bois, who had an ear for magic, heard something more. But what he heard wasn't just a voice. He heard the missing half of something legendary, something that hadn't even been imagined yet. And just like that, the pieces began to fall into place. That was the moment everything shifted, when Du Bois thought back to Kix, not as just a songwriter working in the shadows, but as someone with something electric in him, something untapped. Kix already had success penning hits, but Du Bois had a gut feeling that his real place was under the lights, not behind the curtain. It was a long shot, but Du Bois took it. He introduced Ronnie to Kix, even though they were complete strangers. No history, no friendship, just two men who couldn't have been more different in style, in presence, in life. Their first meeting wasn't some instant fairy tale spark. It was clumsy, cautious. Both men circled each other like boxers in round one, not sure if this pairing would lead to magic or a mess. But then they sat down with their guitars and something clicked, deep, natural, and completely unforced. In that moment, music became the translator for everything they couldn't say out loud. From a simple jam session, they recorded a demo, and that tape caught fire. Almost overnight, they were inking a record deal, and by the summer of 1991, their first single, Brand New Man, hit the airwaves. What followed? No one could have predicted. That album didn't just make noise, it rewrote the country music rulebook. 4 #1 hits right out the gate. 4. That had never happened before with a debut country duo. Fans were hooked not just by the sound, but by the story. A quiet Alabama soul singer and a high-energy Louisiana showman who had no business fitting together. Somehow, fitting together perfectly. From coast to coast, people weren't just listening. They were lining up, hanging on every word Ronnie sang and every note Kix threw down. A new force had arrived in Nashville. That song, Scootin Boogie, didn't just ride the charts, it became a cultural phenomenon. Suddenly, every bar and dance hall from Texas to Montana was packed with folks line dancing in sync like it was instinct. Dance studios were overbooked. Even people who'd never owned a cowboy hat were stepping in rhythm. It was like someone had lit a fire under America's boots, and Brooks and Dunn had tossed the match. And in that whirlwind, it wasn't hard to see why. Ronnie, with that soul-stirring voice that pulled you in and didn't let go, and Kix bounding across the stage with the kind of energy that could light up a county fair. Their first album went 6 times platinum. Then came Hard Workin' Man, and once again, they delivered hit after hit. In 1994, they grabbed their first Grammy. By 1996, they weren't just nominees at the CMA Awards, they were history makers, becoming the first duo to ever win Entertainer of the Year. Think about that. An award usually reserved for megastar solo acts. now handed to a pair who had rewritten what a country duo could be. That night, the industry didn't just applaud, they took notice. Something powerful was happening. Then came My Maria. Originally a 70s B.W. Stevenson song, Ronnie had his doubts. Covers rarely hit the same way originals do, but once they laid it down, those doubts vanished. It held on to the #1 spot for 3 straight weeks and became the biggest country song of the year. Even mainstream radio stations that rarely played twang couldn't ignore it. New fans poured in, teenagers, college kids, even city dwellers who'd never stepped foot in a honky-tonk. Suddenly, country wasn't just for the South, it was for everyone. Between 1992 and 2006, they won Duo of the Year at the CMAs almost every single time, missing only once in 2000. That kind of consistency? Unheard of. But they weren't just winning because they were fan favorites. Every album showed evolution, new themes, deeper lyrics, broader sounds. Their music matured alongside their audience, never stale, always bold. Their concerts, nothing short of spectacular. Forget the dusty stages and minimal lighting of the past. Brooks and Dunn brought full-blown pyrotechnics, rock-style setups, and crowds that screamed back every lyric. 50,000 people strong, night after night. They didn't just play songs, they gave people memories. Fireworks, guitars, and cowboy hats, all mixed with the kind of stage presence that made it feel like something bigger than a show. It was an event, an escape. Some of their songs transcended music. Only in America was adopted by politicians across the aisle, used in both George W. Bush and Barack Obama's campaigns. That's not just crossover appeal, it's timelessness. It was patriotic without division, proud without arrogance. It made people feel like they belonged to something bigger, and that's the rarest kind of magic in music. But what made their legacy even stronger was what they gave back. Kix devoted himself to music education through his Keep the Music Playing program, funneling over $11 million into Tennessee schools. In 2015, he was honored with the first-ever CMA Foundation Humanitarian Award. He wasn't just making music, he was planting seeds. Ronnie had his own quiet mission, hosting Rock the Barn concerts at his property near Nashville to support cancer research and Gilda's Club. It wasn't about fame, it was about impact. Every album they dropped turned to platinum. Brand New Man, 6 times over. Hard Workin' Man, 5. Even their greatest hits collections moved like fresh releases. People didn't just like their music, they kept it with them, like a favorite photo or a well-worn pair of boots. So when they finally announced in 2009 that they were stepping away, the heartbreak hit hard. After 20 years, 20 #1 hits, and more awards than you could count, it truly felt like the curtain closing on something irreplaceable. But deep down, fans couldn't help but wonder, was this really goodbye? Or just a long pause in a story still waiting for its next surprise? Ronnie Dunn used to walk into any room with quiet swagger, the kind of energy that filled arenas without needing to shout. But after Brooks and Dunn went their separate ways, something shifted. His solo releases didn't ignite the same fire, and radio stations that once championed every track now passed over him. That kind of silence speaks louder than words. You could see it in his eyes during interviews, that flicker of doubt creeping in. Was it over? Was that long climb to the top just a memory now? Behind closed doors, the pressure built up like storm clouds. The studio, once a sanctuary of creativity, turned cold. Ronnie would show up, guitar in hand, but his spirit was dimmed. He started second-guessing his voice, his lyrics, even his place in the business. A man who used to move with purpose now paced his Tennessee farm in circles, haunted by questions that had no easy answers. He wasn't chasing stardom anymore. He was just trying to remember why he started. Some of his closest friends noticed how he began to retreat, skipping events, canceling appearances, avoiding cameras. The quiet was deafening. Even music insiders, people who had watched him rise from Texas honky-tonks to country superstardom, started to whisper, was this the final act? His second solo album in 2014 was honest, full of raw emotion, but the charts barely flinched, and Ronnie felt it deeply. He wondered if the world had outgrown his sound, or if maybe the sound had outgrown him. Imagine pouring your soul into something, only to have it land with a thud. That kind of disappointment doesn't just sting, It rewrites the story you've been telling yourself for decades. On that Tennessee farm, though, something began to shift. One evening, with no lights, no label pressure, no expectations, Ronnie sat down with his guitar, and something happened. He didn't write to impress or win awards. He wrote to survive. The songs that emerged weren't built for radio. They were built for healing. And that raw truth became the heart of peace, love, and country music. It didn't top the charts. In a move that stunned the industry, he started his own label. No executives calling the shots, no boardroom compromises, just him, the music, and full creative control. And maybe more importantly, he opened the door for younger artists trying to navigate a world that too often rewards conformity. That independence became his quiet rebellion. Meanwhile, Kix Brooks was reinventing himself too. He found his rhythm behind a microphone again, this time on American Country Countdown. It wasn't about stage lights or fanfare. It was about storytelling, connecting, and keeping country history alive. Kix even explored acting, indie projects, off-the-beaten-path roles that let him scratch a creative itch without chasing box office gold. Then came the dinner that changed everything. It was casual, just the two of them. No contracts, no agendas, just a simple idea. What if we played together again? Reba McEntire heard about it and made a call. Caesar's Palace, the Coliseum. Not a tour, just one spot. No travel, no stress, just music. That first Vegas show in 2015 was a test and a revelation. The crowd roared. The chemistry was still there, stronger even. And for Ronnie, it was proof. People hadn't forgotten. He hadn't faded. He'd evolved. And when he stepped on that stage and heard his voice, crystal clear in the intimate acoustics, it was like rediscovering a part of himself he thought was gone. What followed was a bold, unexpected move: the reboot albums. Brooks and Dunn handed over their classics to a new generation. Luke Combs, Kane Brown, Megan Maroney, even Jelly Roll. Some tracks stayed faithful, others reimagined the whole vibe. But the impact? Massive. A fresh audience fell in love with timeless tracks dressed in new clothes. Jelly Roll's symphonic Believe turned heads, while Morgan Wallen's barely touched Neon Moon proved that some songs don't need reinvention, they just need to be felt. By 2024, the momentum had built into something nobody saw coming. Brooks and Dunn won CMA Vocal Duo of the Year. It wasn't just a trophy, it was validation. They weren't relics, they were still vital, still shaping the sound of modern country. And Ronnie? He was no longer trying to fit in. He was standing tall, doing it his way. Financially, Ronnie Dunn has been as calculated as he is creative. Over the years, he's owned a collection of high-end vehicles, including a Mercedes G-Wagon, a customized vintage Ford pickup, and a sleek black Bentley Continental GT. His watch collection includes Rolex Submariners, Audemars Piguet Royal Oaks, and a treasured Patek Philippe gifted after a platinum record milestone. Real estate. His Tennessee estate spans hundreds of acres, including a recording barn, guest houses, and private riding trails. He's also owned a vacation home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Though he doesn't flaunt it, Dunn has access to private jet charters, often used for tour stops and music events. He's invested in Nashville restaurants, independent music tech ventures, and owns equity in his label. As for protection, his insurance portfolio includes robust health and voice coverage, high-value property insurance, and liability policies tied to his brand and music rights. His story offers a lesson: diversify, stay grounded, and never let legacy make you complacent. Looking back, it's hard to imagine that this man, the voice behind countless country anthems, once thought he had nothing left to say. But maybe that's the beauty of it. Sometimes you have to lose the spotlight to find the spark again. Ronnie Dunn didn't just return to music, he reclaimed it. And with every note, every stripped-down lyric, he's proving that relevance isn't about staying current, it's about staying true. So, Ronnie Dunn finally told his side. And wow, what a ride! If you loved this deep dive, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more country legends, untold truths, and backstage drama.